Hello, friend. Today, I want to share with you a quick update on just how my family is processing through this season of loss and grief that we've been walking in since December. Um, a lot of you, if you haven't seen anything from me before, quick backstory: my third child was born in November of 2022 and then passed at 26 days old in December of 2022. She passed from complications of a congenital defect called CDH. And I have a whole video talking about that whole process in detail on my page. So if you haven't heard that and don't know much about that, you might want to check that out to kind of get some context for this video. But it's now August of 2023 at the time of recording this, and several of you reached out and wanted to know how we're doing now. And I realized I haven't really talked about that a whole ton, and so I wanted to share that with you guys. Now, it's been 8 months since Faith passed, and about 6 months since the last update, and so it's been a lot. It's been a really full 6 months. And one thing that I think is really interesting, I want to talk about this, is the process of grief. Grief is its own thing. It's very unique. Everybody has their own way of dealing with and processing grief and pain. But one thing I have learned in this is that grief amplifies what's already in you. And that can be good and bad. And that's really what we've been navigating as a family in the last 6 months, 8 months, is how to process grief while still choosing to honor the Lord. Because grief has a way of amplifying problems that were already there, whether it's a character problem or a relationship problem. But it also has a way of amplifying the good things that are there too, like faith and grace and love. And so that's a big part of what we've been navigating as a family is it's, the pain of loss, the pain of death. Even though as Christians we have the hope, we know we will see our baby again in heaven whenever it's our time to go, whether the Lord takes us all at once or when we die, whenever that happens, that we will see her again soon at some point. But that doesn't negate the pain of missing, the pain of this isn't the way the world's supposed to be. This isn't how God meant the world to be. And death is in the world because of sin. And then because of that, we then are dealing with sin on a consistent basis, right? Because we're all sinners and we all have different ways of handling stuff. Some people get angry, some people get withdrawn, some people get angry, or I already said angry, some people get bitter. Some people get overwhelmed, some people get depressed. And none of these things in and of themselves, except for bitterness, but like anger with kind of isolating a little bit, depression, none of these things are sins, okay? Bitterness is a sin, but anger is an emotion. It's not a sin. It's what you do with the anger that becomes sin. Same thing with like depression. Depression is an emotion, a feeling, and it's part of what happens. And so, but how we deal with those feelings, how we deal with that is where the sin can come in. And then we have to work through all those nitty-gritties. And so that's just really what the last 6 months have been for our family, is a lot of hunkering down and working through things as they come up, in a good way. And as things have been amplified, maybe issues, character issues or relationship issues that were kind of already there, but got amplified, we've been really working through those. And in all of that, staying very unified in the decision with between my husband and myself. I talk about in my previous video how when we first found out that Faith had this defect, this hernia, we made the decision together. We talked about it and we're like, we both committed, we don't know what this road looks like, because we didn't know whether she was going to die or whether she was going to survive. We didn't know if she survived, if there would be additional complications, and what her life would look like if she did survive. We made that commitment that no matter what this looks like, that we're committed to staying open to the Lord and inviting him into the process and coming out stronger in our faith, coming out stronger as a family, in our family relationships and our family identity. And that commitment has really, I think, been a huge part of what's kind of really taken us through this, as it got real messy. It got real messy in there. And there's still pieces that are messy. Believe me, it's not like, oh, we're done. It's a process, and I don't know when we're ever going to be done fully processing grief, because we're going to always miss her. There's always going to be someone missing from the family lineup when we're all standing here together. And that's just going to be part of life now. And so, but in that initial rawness, as time goes on, the rawness wears off, and there becomes a level of status quo and learning how to live with this tension of grief, but then also loving life and enjoying life and choosing joy. And so that's really what we've been doing. I'm not going to go into crazy details, because that's private for my family and I to really have experience together, as far as, you know, what it really looked like practically to be working out family and character issues in that. But we all have been, from my husband to myself to my 2 older children who are living. We've all been working through lots of fun things. And it seems like we're kind of starting to now, at the kind of 8-month mark, enter into a new season of it becoming a little bit more of what, kind of getting a better idea of what normal looks like. What does normal look like now that this has happened? Because, and I've talked about this in some other videos that I've shared in the kind of closer to the event as I was processing. I shared some of the things that we were processing. And so one of the things that I shared in previous videos is talking about, like, when you've gone through such a traumatic, tragical crisis in your life, the very, like, fundamental dynamic of your life changes. There's no going back to who you were before. There's no going back to whatever was normal before. It is a complete shift in your very being, in your very soul. And we all have felt that in my family, from my husband down to my youngest child. We've all felt that shift and that growing pain of, okay, so now what does normal look like? And so now we're starting to enter into a season of what does that normal look like? And for us, that's starting to look like getting into some rhythms of becoming more unified on our family priorities and our family focuses. We're spending a lot more quality time together as a family than we did before. I think all of us tended to be a lot more distracted before this happened. And I think the death, the death of a baby kind of really, there's nothing like that to really make you realize, like, wow, life's really short. And I'm not guaranteed more time than this moment right now. So I get to make this moment count, and not from like a pressure or a weird way, but more of a like, wow, yeah, scrolling Instagram really isn't that important. Right? Some of these work things really aren't that important in comparison. And I mean, obviously we need to have jobs and provide for our families, but like the extra stuff that maybe isn't actually adding value, but is actually taking away from the true priorities, maybe we can let some of those things go. Maybe we can let go of some of these activities that are pulling us apart and having us all in all different directions. So there's been a lot of that for us. For us, our new normal really is looking like a lot more time at home, a lot more time reading, a lot more time playing outside and being in the garden, but most of all being present with each other and not distracted. And Another thing that looks like is gearing up and getting ready for the next season of school. My oldest child's in preschool, and I homeschool, so getting ready for that. Creating rhythms in our home to really streamline and simplify home management, even as a mom, right? For those of you who are moms watching this, like, as a mom, it gets so busy and we get so distracted because we have all these things to do. Not only are we, taking care of the kids and cooking, we're cleaning, housework, running errands, chauffeuring if our kids have activities, right? We have all these things. And so one of the things that I've really done in the last 6 months is just simplified, really cut out anything that is unnecessary, even in homemaking, and working on creating systems and processes to streamline homemaking so that it doesn't take up a lot of time. And when I am doing it, and even when I am doing, cooking, cleaning, housework, homekeeping, homemaking, I have my kids with me. I have them involved. I'm having them stir the bread or, help knead the bread, or slice something with a child-safe knife. They can, spread butter for themselves with the dull knife or whatever, right? Like a butter knife. Having them stir, having them load the dishwasher, having them unload the dishwasher with the age-appropriate things, obviously, all age-appropriate. But really that togetherness, that presence, that really is even more than before, because I've always been very convicted that presence is important and engagement is important, but in a new way, even more than before, and with even more depth and urgency than before. That's become a priority and a value for my husband and I. And so that really is kind of the update on like how we're processing of, it seems like I feel like we've kind of come out of like the darkest parts of it and are starting to kind of step into the new normal. What does our new normal look like? So there's that. In all of that, I have a resource I want to share with you, and then I actually have like some other exciting specific things that have happened, personal updates. And so one of the resources that I've found that have been really helpful for me, actually I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I want to talk about the fun, exciting stuff first, okay? So that's where we are. It's been 8 months. But the other thing that's been really helpful in the last 2 months, there's been the shift as well, because there is a shifting season, because we found out that I'm expecting baby number 4. And so I'm currently, at the time of recording this, I am 13 weeks pregnant, and with baby number 4. And so that has been another piece of this of excitement, and also bringing up its own processing of, it's pretty close, right? It's a pretty close gap, but also there's healing there of like the joy of looking forward to another child, and the hope that brings, while also grieving the milestones that should be that aren't, right? Faith would be 9 months old today, and she'd probably be starting to maybe crawl a little bit or get interested in food, right? They're the little milestones so there's those moments of that grief, but then in that there is also this joy and this hope of starting to prepare for another child. And so I think the biggest thing has been learning to live in this tension of joy and pain, because it never really goes away. At least that's what I hear, and that's what I'm experiencing. It can kind of get a little less sharp, but it doesn't really go away. And from talking to other mamas who've walked through similar stories, that sounds like that's probably what it's going to be. It's this tension. And so learning how to walk in that and trust the Lord in that has been so huge. And then as things come up and other things come up, because there's been many other things that have been thrown out at us, like other circumstances outside of us, learning how to navigate all of that and inviting the Lord in. And I think this is such a key thing. Inviting the Lord into the process. That's the most key part of processing grief, because we don't want to become bitter. And bitterness comes in when we start to resent what we've been through, when we start to become angry about what we've gone through, when we start to blame. And we don't want to become bitter, because bitterness really becomes like a poison that permeates every part of our being. And so learning how to acknowledge the pain, feel the pain, and whatever other emotions might come up. It could be anger. There could be some resentment. There could be some of those things. And none of those feelings are wrong. They're part of the process. But where they can become wrong and unhealthy is when we choose to sit in them to the extent that we become hard and closed off from the Lord and from other people. And so that, I think, has really been the process that we've been walking through of feel the feelings, process them, let them out, like let them go through you, flow through you so that you can experience them and then let them go. Because what's not experienced and felt gets stuffed and it's still there. It is still there. It's just going to come out in an inappropriate way later. Hurt, resentment, whatever that's stuffed might come out as explosive anger that seems completely irrational in a few months, days, months, even years, the longer it gets stuffed. And so what we want to do, and this has been the process that we've been working through as a family, as individuals, I've been working through it. Again, I've been supporting my children and my husband as they've been walking through it too, is the letting it, feeling the feeling, and then letting it go, and inviting the Lord in to come in and then heal that raw spot, because He's the only one who can. Nothing is going to really truly soothe and heal the pain other than the Lord. And so choosing to stay in that open place, choosing to stay in that state of peace and joy is really what we've been focusing on while dealing with the mess. So anyway, so that's kind of the quick update there. Hopefully that was helpful and encouraging for those of you who maybe are walking through grief as well. I hope you found that encouraging. If you are in a place of struggle and grief, and it doesn't have to be necessarily specifically having lost a child, it could be anything. There's lots of things that cause grief, or like crisis seasons in our life, seasons that really are just really hard. They really suck. I'd love to support you. Reach out to me. I would love to hear your story, hear what you're going through, and support you in the best way that I can. You can always email me. My email address is coachamanda@amandakstout.com. Another thing I want to share with you is a resource that's really been helping me as I've been processing is an exercise. And this is an exercise that I learned several years ago now, as part of my coach training. For those of you who don't know, I'm a certified life coach and faith-based life coach. And I've been through extensive training for that, and multiple certifications. And one of the exercises that is so helpful is a self-coaching exercise that walks me through becoming, identifying what it is that I'm truly thinking and feeling, so that I can process it, feel it, work through it with the Lord, and then get to a place of standing in biblical truth. Because a lot of times when we're experiencing feelings of anger, feelings of frustration, feelings of anything that typically we might consider, I hate to even use this word, but negative feelings, lower energy feelings, more oppressive feelings, right? The heavy feelings. A lot of times those are rooted in pain, or maybe potentially believing something that isn't 100% true, or isn't in alignment with Scripture, or we're dwelling on something that isn't necessarily in alignment with Scripture, even in our grief and even in our pain. That can look like blame. That can look like a lot of things. So the exercise that I do, it's I call it kind of like the self-coaching exercise. It's just walking through, becoming aware of kind of really narrowing down, like what is it that I'm really thinking and believing right now, and is it lining up with scripture? Like, is it really true? Is it in alignment with scripture and what God says about this situation? And if it's not, how can I bring it to line up? How can I shift? What do I need? How do I do that? How do I process that? So this is a really great exercise that I've done a lot in the last 6 months. And it's super helpful. It's so helpful that I have turned it into a little guide, downloadable guide. And it's on my website. It's normally $7, which in and of itself is like pretty good deal for a multi-page process that you can print out as many times as you want and walk through it as many times as you want with instructions and the questions and the prompts and all of it. But for those of you who are watching this video and made it this far, if you are interested in that, I actually have a coupon code for you for 50% off. If you use the code FAITH23, so the word faith, numbers 23, at the checkout, it will take 50% off, making it only $3.50, and that's like less than a cup of coffee. So that resource is one that's really helped me, and just because it's helped me so much, I wrote it down and turned it into an actual resource, because I would just do the exercise, right, because I knew what to do from my training. So I wrote it down into a resource for you that you can download. You can have it on your computer forever and print out as many times as you want. You can download onto your tablet or your phone or whatever. You have access to it for as long as it's up on my website. And obviously, if you download it, you have access to it forever. And it's less than the price of a cup of coffee. Additionally, another little bonus with that is if you do download that and you walk through it and you do the exercise, at the end, there's an opportunity for you to get a free strategy session where you can bring what you've done already on that worksheet to our call, and I will help you dig into it even more if that's something that would be a support for you, and that call's free. So check that out. It's on my website, amandakstout.com. The link is also in the show notes, and hopefully those resources are helpful for you, and I will talk to you later. Bye.